Admiral Kazim stood at the edge of the command deck, his 6 golden eyes fixed on the chaos beyond the flagship's massive viewport. The void between stars had become a graveyard. Dozens of shattered Imperial vessels drifted silently. Their wreckage, a grim testament to the battle raging around them. Kazim gritted his teeth. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. The humans were meant to be an easy conquest, a mere footnote in the Galactic Empire's long history of domination. Yet here they were, fighting with unexpected ferocity. "Status report," he barked, his voice echoing across the bridge. "Admiral, we've lost the 7th, 8th, and 12th Assault Squadrons," stammered the tactical officer, his scales fading from emerald green to sickly white. "Enemy forces are regrouping near the orbital debris field." "Impossible!" Kazim slammed his fist against the command rail. "They shouldn't have the strength to regroup." The officer hesitated before swallowing hard. "Sir, there's something else." The bridge fell into tense silence. Every officer could feel it, a creeping sensation of doom, thick and suffocating. "We intercepted a human transmission," the officer continued, voice shaking. "Their admiral was heard saying, 'Our main fleet hasn't even entered the battlefield yet.'" For a moment, Kazim thought he had misheard. He blinked slowly, mind struggling to comprehend. The humans hadn't committed their full strength. They were fighting this viciously with only a fraction of their forces. A cold alien fear gripped his heart. "No," he whispered. "That can't be right." But deep down, he knew it was true. The signs were all there. The brutal hit-and-run tactics, the ferocity of their pilots, the relentless way they fought for every inch of space. These weren't the desperate acts of cornered prey. These were the calculated maneuvers of a predator that had been playing the Empire for fools. "Order the fleet to pull back," Kazim growled, his voice low and dangerous. The helmsman hesitated. "Sir, if we retreat now, it will look like cowardice. The Council—" "To the void with the Council," Kazim roared. "You haven't seen what I've seen today. The humans, they're not fighting to survive. They're fighting to win." Before the helmsman could respond, alarms screamed across the bridge. A new formation of human ships had just dropped out of hyperspace, sleek black vessels bristling with weapons that made even the Empire's most advanced cruisers look outdated and slow. "Sir, new contacts. 70... no, 100 ships," gasped the tactical officer. A burst of static filled the bridge speakers. "This is Admiral Leone of the United Terran Forces," announced a calm, steel-edged voice. "To the invading forces of the so-called Galactic Empire, you are ordered to surrender immediately. You have one chance." Kazim felt his knees buckle. He caught himself on the railing, breathing hard. Around him, the bridge crew stood frozen, terror written across every face. They had underestimated humanity. They had thought Earth was a backwater world, weak and primitive. They hadn't understood that humans were something far more dangerous. They were survivors, they were warriors, and they were just getting started. The bridge lights dimmed to blood red as emergency protocols activated. Kazim stared out at the human fleet now surrounding them like a noose tightening around the Empire's throat. Their ships moved with terrifying precision, a silent, coordinated dance of death. "Raise shields to maximum and prepare to break through their lines," Kazim ordered, but his voice cracked. Everyone knew it was futile. These humans weren't just better armed, they were smarter, faster, and utterly merciless. In the span of hours, they had accomplished what no other species had ever managed. They had broken the spirit of the undefeated galactic forces. Kazim clenched his claws against the railing. He couldn't accept this. They were the Empire. They were supposed to be masters of the galaxy, not humiliated by a species barely 3 centuries into spaceflight. "Sir, incoming transmission again," said a junior officer, voice trembling. "Put it through," Kazim replied, his mouth dry. Admiral Leon's face appeared on the main screen, a man in his late 40s with cold gray eyes and a scar running down his cheek. His expression was calm, almost bored, as if addressing an insect. "This is your final warning," Leon said. "Surrender. There will be no negotiations after this." The transmission ended abruptly, giving no time for reply. Kazim drew a long, ragged breath. In the silence that followed, he could hear the whispered prayers of his bridge crew, each muttering in their own language. "Enemy movements detected," cried the tactical officer. "They're preparing to fire! All ships, defensive formation Omega!" Kazim shouted. "If we can punch through the left flank, we might—" Before he could finish, bright blue flashes erupted across the human fleet. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, a relentless barrage that tore into the Empire's ships with surgical precision. Kazim watched in horror as 3 cruisers simply vanished from the sensors, torn apart in seconds. The Empire's defensive lines collapsed like wet paper. Screams filled the bridge as more ships reported catastrophic damage or went silent altogether. "Sir, our left flank is gone," someone cried. Kazim squeezed his eyes shut for half a heartbeat, trying to think. There had to be a way out. There always was. "Signal all remaining forces," he growled. "Prepare for emergency hyperspace jump. Get us out of here." "But sir—" "Do it!" Kazim roared, slamming his fist against the control panel hard enough to crack it. The helmsman scrambled to comply, entering the emergency jump coordinates. Just as he confirmed the jump sequence, another alarm blared, harsher than before. "Human ships are jamming our hyperspace drives," the engineer shrieked. "We can't!" "Jump!" The words hit Kazim like a physical blow. His legs gave out, and he stumbled back into his command chair, staring blankly at the screen. Trapped. They were trapped. He looked again at the human fleet, now slowly advancing on them like hunters closing in for the kill. Kazim realized with sickening certainty that they weren't just going to lose this battle. They were about to be erased. Not surrender, not occupation, total annihilation. The humans hadn't just come to defend their world. They had come to end the Empire. He had no choice left. Swallowing the bitter acid of defeat, Kazim opened a transmission to Admiral Leon. "This is Admiral Kazim of the Galactic Empire," he said, voice broken. We surrender." The screen flickered to life again, showing Leon once more. The human admiral gave a small, cold smile that held no mercy. "You had your chance," he said. "Now you live or die on our terms." The screen went black. Kazim slumped in his chair, feeling the weight of centuries crash down on his shoulders. Around him, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence, the mighty empire reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale for history books. They had thought themselves invincible. They had thought humanity was weak. They had been wrong, so terribly, fatally wrong. The lights on the command deck flickered as the human ships pressed closer, their weapons hot and ready. A few desperate ships in the Imperial fleet tried to break away, engines screaming against the jamming fields, but one by one they were picked off like insects under a magnifying glass. Kazim sat motionless, watching the slaughter unfold. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this, an enemy that not only outmatched them, but showed no hesitation in crushing them utterly. No quarter given, no hesitation, no mercy. The humans fought as if they had a personal grudge against the very existence of the Empire. Kazim gritted his teeth, tasting blood in his mouth. This wasn't a war anymore. It was an execution. A soft beep sounded on the command chair's console. Private channel incoming. Kazim leaned forward and accepted the transmission, expecting another ultimatum. Instead, Admiral Leon's voice came through, calm and cold. "Listen carefully, Kazim," Leon said. "You have exactly 10 minutes to order your fleet to stand down and evacuate all surviving personnel from the ships. Any vessel that fails to comply will be destroyed. There are no negotiations, no treaties, no mercy. Understand? Kazim hesitated, pride screaming inside him to resist, but reality crushed it swiftly. They had already lost. Further resistance would only spill more Imperial blood for nothing. Understood, he replied in a voice that no longer sounded like his own. When the line cut, Kazim slumped back, the fire inside him extinguished. He turned to his shattered bridge crew. Order all surviving units to power down weapons, lower shields, and prepare evacuation pods. Inform them we have surrendered. The crew moved without question. Orders were relayed, ships powered down, and thousands of small escape pods began launching from the Imperial ships, drifting slowly toward a neutral zone established by the humans. Kazim watched as his mighty fleet, the pride of the Empire, scattered like dying embers into the void. The humiliation was unbearable. Every second felt like a knife twisting in his gut. Yet the humans did not fire. They let the escape pods drift safely. They had won, they knew it, and they wanted the Empire to witness their mercy as much as their wrath. It was a statement Kazim understood all too clearly. You are broken, you are conquered, and you are allowed to live only because we permit it. Kazim rose slowly from his command chair, his legs unsteady. His ship, the Imperial dreadnought Astria, would be boarded soon. He could already see the human assault craft docking along the hull, their sharp black bodies like the teeth of a predator ready to rip apart what little remained. He took one last look at the bridge, memorizing every detail. The cracked control panels, the dead crewmen slumped over their stations, the thin smoke rising from shattered consoles. This was the end of an era. The doors at the rear of the bridge hissed open, and human soldiers poured in, weapons raised, faces hidden behind expressionless helmets. Hands where we can see them, one barked. Kazim raised his hands slowly, feeling the heavy gaze of every soldier on him. He was just another prisoner now, no longer Admiral Kazim of the Galactic Empire, just a defeated relic of a dead regime. As he was roughly shackled and led away, he caught one final glimpse through the viewport. Outside, the human fleet floated, like a steel storm over the broken remains of his armada. The Empire had come to Earth expecting slaves. Instead, they had found monsters. And Kazim knew, with a deep and terrible certainty, that the galaxy itself would never be the same again. The walk down the ruined halls of the Astria felt endless, each step echoing with the shame Kazim carried like a chain around his neck. The human soldiers flanked him on both sides, their weapons, always trained, their movements sharp and professional. They didn't jeer, didn't speak, didn't even glance at him with contempt. It was almost worse. He wasn't even worth their hatred, just another defeated enemy to be processed and forgotten. They led him to one of the drop shuttles docked on the hull. As he was forced inside, Kazim caught a glimpse of the other prisoners, Imperial officers, ship captains, soldiers, all stripped of their weapons, faces pale and hollow. These were the finest the Empire had produced, now sitting quietly like cattle awaiting slaughter. The shuttle doors sealed shut with a hiss, and a low hum filled the chamber as it detached from the Astria. Through the small, reinforced window, Kazim could see the massive human flagship growing closer. It was an ugly ship, brutal and utilitarian, without the sleek grandeur of Imperial designs, but every inch radiated strength and menace, a floating fortress made for one purpose: war. The shuttle docked, and one by one they were herded out. No words were spoken. Kazim stumbled as he stepped onto the cold metal floor of the human ship. The air smelled different, harsh, industrial, full of oil and ozone. A smell of machinery and sweat, not ceremony and empire. They were marched through a labyrinth of corridors until they arrived at a massive holding bay. Hundreds of prisoners already filled the space, surrounded by heavily armed guards. A thick, invisible weight hung over everything, the undeniable knowledge that their fates were no longer their own. Kazim was pushed into line and left standing. For a while he just stared at the floor, lost in the swirling storm of his thoughts. Then a low murmur rippled through the crowd. He looked up. Standing on a raised platform at the far end of the bay was Admiral Leone, flanked by several human officers. He wasn't dressed in ceremonial garb or some ridiculous victor's robe. No medals gleamed on his chest. He wore a simple, worn black uniform, practical, efficient, deadly. Leone stepped forward and surveyed the gathered prisoners, his gray eyes cold as deep space. "You thought we were weak," he began, voice carrying easily across the bay. "You thought humanity would kneel." Kazim felt the sting of the words, felt them strike the hearts of everyone present. There was no anger in Leone's tone, no boastfulness, just a simple, brutal truth. "You didn't understand us," Leone continued. "You thought because we were fractured, because we fought amongst ourselves, that we were easy prey. You mistook our chaos for weakness, our divisions for frailty." The human admiral leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a tone that made the hair along Kazim's neck rise. "You failed to see what every tyrant before you has learned the hard way, that nothing unites humanity faster than an enemy who tries to break us." Silence hung thick after his words. Leone straightened again, hands clasped behind his back. "You are no longer soldiers. You are no longer rulers. You are prisoners of war. Your fate will be decided by the United Terran Tribunal. And believe me, Earth does not forget." He turned sharply and marched away, the heavy doors at the rear of the bay hissing closed behind him. For a long moment no one moved, no one spoke. Kazim stared after him, a hollow pit opening in his chest. He understood now why the Empire had lost. The humans hadn't just been fighting for survival. They had been fighting for revenge, for dignity, for every insult and threat the Empire had ever thrown at them, and they had fought like only humans could, with every ounce of fury, stubbornness, and savagery in their blood. Kazim slumped back against the cold wall of the holding bay, the final pieces of his pride crumbling to dust. They hadn't just underestimated Earth, they had awakened it, and the galaxy would bleed for it. The hours dragged by in the holding bay, a heavy silence pressing down on everyone. Some captured officers huddled together in small groups whispering, in broken voices, clinging to scraps of hope. Others just sat alone, staring into nothing, their minds adrift somewhere far from this cold metallic prison. Kazim stayed where he was, slumped against the wall, watching, listening, trying to piece together what little information he could. He learned fast that the humans had moved with terrifying efficiency after the battle. Every Imperial ship that surrendered was boarded. Within minutes, every officer cataloged, every database ripped apart. There would be no opportunity for a second resistance, no chance to rally and fight again. The humans hadn't just defeated them on the battlefield, they were ripping the Empire out by its roots. A harsh klaxon blared overhead, jolting everyone to their feet. The prisoners were ordered into rows, hands behind their heads, as heavily armed soldiers stormed the bay again. This time they weren't just here to guard, they were here to select. Kazim tensed as soldiers moved down the rows, stopping at intervals, tagging certain prisoners and pulling them away. No explanations were given, no pattern was obvious. Some were high-ranking officers, others were lowly deckhands. The selection seemed almost random, but the fear it spread was surgical, calculated. When they reached him, a human soldier paused. Their visor hid their expression. But there was a hesitation there, almost like they recognized him. Then the soldier raised a scanner, its green beam sweeping across Kazim's face. "Admiral Kazim," a mechanical voice confirmed from the device. The soldier tapped something on their wrist pad. Two more humans appeared instantly, gripping Kazim by the arms and dragging him out of line. He didn't struggle. There was no point. They led him through more twisting corridors until they reached a small interrogation room. Spartan, clinical, a table and two chairs bolted to the floor, a single camera blinking in one corner. Kazim was shoved into a chair, his bindings secured to the tabletop. The soldiers left without a word, the door locking behind them with a final decisive hiss. He sat there for what felt like hours, the cold metal seeping into his bones. His mind wandered in dark circles, memories of glorious battles, of victory, parades on the home world, of the Emperor's proud voice declaring the Empire's destiny among the stars. All of it ashes now. The door finally opened. Admiral Leone walked in alone, a data pad in one hand. He didn't sit. He just stood there, looking down at Kazim like one might study a dangerous animal trapped behind glass. Kazim, Leone said, voice flat. Architect of the Imperial Northern Campaign, executor of the Zendari massacres, slayer of the Lumiri colonies, each title was spoken like a blade being twisted in Kazim's gut. You built your reputation on crushing the weak, Leone continued, his eyes narrowing, on conquering civilizations that couldn't fight back. You carved out your legacy in blood and ash, and you thought Earth would be another name on your list. Kazim said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Leone leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a low, almost conversational tone. Here's the thing you never understood, he said. Weakness isn't our curse, it's our weapon. It's what makes us dangerous. Because when we're pushed, when we're desperate, we don't break. He tapped the data pad, and a hologram flared to life between them. It showed footage of Earth's cities after the Empire's first strikes, burning ruins, crying children, people digging survivors out of rubble with their bare hands. You showed us no mercy, Leone said quietly. And now we will show you what humanity does when it has nothing left to lose. He turned off the hologram and tossed the data pad onto the table, where it slid to a stop in front of Kazim. You're going to tell us everything, Leone said. Fleet movements, base locations, supply routes. You're going to help us tear your empire apart from the inside. Kazim finally lifted his head, meeting Leone's icy gaze. And if I refuse? He rasped. Leone smiled. Not a kind smile, not a human smile. If you refuse, he said, we won't kill you. He leaned closer, his voice a low, deadly whisper. We'll send you back alive, broken, so your people can see what happens to those who think they can stand against Earth. For the first time since his capture, true terror stabbed through Kazim's heart. Not for himself, but for the Empire. Because he knew now the humans weren't fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for vengeance, and they were very, very good at it. Kazim stared at the data pad like it was a bomb about to go off. His hands, shackled to the table, trembled slightly, though he willed them still. Around him, the air felt thick, charged, like the moment before a storm tears the sky open. He had been interrogated before, had even ordered the interrogations of others, but never like this, never with so much weight pressing down. It wasn't just about extracting information. It was about crushing his will entirely, making him a symbol of total defeat. Leone remained silent, giving Kazim the space to stew in his own fear. It was a tactic, of course. Humans were masters of pressure. They didn't scream, didn't torture. Not like the Empire had done to its enemies. No, they let you destroy yourself from the inside out. Minutes dragged into hours. No food, no water, no sleep. The walls seemed to close in, and Kazim found himself remembering things he hadn't thought of in decades. The first colony he helped burn, the shrieks of the Zendari children echoing through the smoke. He had once been proud of those victories, had worn them like badges of honor. Now they clung to him like chains made of rotting flesh. Leone returned eventually, stepping through the door with a quiet, measured tread. He didn't speak right away, just set down another data pad, this one showing detailed schematics of Imperial space stations, fleet rosters, personnel files. "You see," Leone said calmly, "we already know a lot thanks to the crews who surrendered. Willingly, thanks to the colonies you abandoned during your retreat. The only thing we're missing is confirmation." He slid the datapad closer with one finger, the scrape of metal on metal making Kazim flinch. "And you, Admiral, are going to confirm it. Not for us. For history." Kazim said nothing. He focused on breathing, trying to summon the reserves of defiance that had carried him through 1,000 battles, but they were paper-thin now, crumbling against the weight of what he had seen, what he had lost. "Your empire abandoned you the moment we broke your fleet," Leone said, his voice almost gentle. "You know that, don't you? No reinforcements, no desperate last charge, no rescue ships slipping through the blockade. They left you to rot." Kazim opened his mouth to argue, to deny it, but the words wouldn't come, because it was true. The Empire had left him behind without a second thought. He was nothing to them now, disposable, forgotten. "Help us," Leone said. "Tell us everything. You might just survive this." Kazim laughed then, a dry, broken sound, bitter and small. "Survival as what? A pet? A prisoner trotted out for propaganda films? A living trophy?" He had survived countless battles, entire worlds burning behind him, but this was something else. Survival here meant becoming a ghost of himself, a living reminder of the Empire's failure. Yet when he thought about the alternative, being paraded back to his home world, shattered and defeated, for all to see, the choice became simpler. It wasn't about honor anymore. That had been stripped from him the moment Earth's fleets had torn his empire apart like paper. It was about vengeance. Not against humanity, no. They had earned their victory. It was against the Empire that had used him and discarded him. Slowly, painfully, Kazim leaned forward. "What do you want to know?" he said, his voice soft but steady. Leone didn't smile, didn't gloat. He just nodded once, sharply, like a general accepting the surrender of a worthy opponent. "Everything," he said. And so Kazim spoke. He spoke of hidden supply caches in dead systems. He spoke of secret bases buried under the moons of forgotten worlds. He gave them fleet schedules, troop deployments, the names of imperial governors who would fold like wet paper at the first sign of human fleets. He gave them the Empire's blood. Every word he spoke was a knife in his own soul. But he did it anyway, because vengeance burned hotter than pride. And as he talked, he could see the future unfold behind Leone's eyes. A future where Earth rose not just as a survivor, but as a new and terrible power in the galaxy. A future where the Empire would be nothing but a cautionary tale whispered in fear. Kazim spoke until his throat was raw, until his voice was a whisper. And still Leone listened, still Earth plotted its next move. Because this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. When the last detail slipped from Kazim's lips, he slumped back in his chair, exhausted beyond anything he'd ever felt. His head throbbed, his vision blurred, but there was a strange, hollow relief in the surrender. He had nothing left to give, no more lies to tell, no pride left to defend. Across the table, Admiral Leone powered off the recorder and stood silently, for a moment, studying him. The coldness was still there, but there was something else now, too. A flicker of grim respect. Not forgiveness, never forgiveness, but a quiet acknowledgement between two soldiers who knew the cost of war all too. "Well, you did the right thing," Leone said simply. Kazim laughed, a dry, broken sound. "Right thing for whom?" Leone didn't answer. He didn't have to. The door hissed open and two human guards stepped in. They unlocked Kazim's bindings, roughly hauling him to his feet. His legs barely worked, but they dragged him along without ceremony. The walk this time was different. Not through the corridors of the prison decks. No, this time they moved deeper into the bowels of the human flagship, past hangar bays teeming with new fleets being prepared, past rows of engineers outfitting sleek, deadly ships with weapons that made Imperial tech look like relics. Earth wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. They were preparing to expand, and Kazim knew deep in his gut that nothing in the galaxy would stop them now. Finally, they reached a small chamber sealed by heavy blast doors. Inside, a single shuttle waited, powered up and ready. Kazim recognized the model, a basic, long-range diplomatic vessel, unarmed, lightly shielded. It wouldn't stand a chance against military craft, but it wasn't meant for battle. It was meant for humiliation. Admiral Leone stood by the ramp, arms folded behind his back. "We're sending you back to the Empire," he said. "You'll be allowed to land on your home world. No weapons, no defenses, just you." Kazim stared at him, cold realization sinking in. "You want them to see what's left of me," he rasped. Leone nodded once. "You're the first stone, the warning shot, a reminder to your people of what's coming." Kazim closed his eyes for a long moment. There was no escape from this, no redemption, only the slow unraveling of everything he had ever believed in. "You could just kill me," he said quietly. Leone's face hardened. "That would be mercy." Without another word, the guards pushed him forward. He stumbled up the ramp into the shuttle, the doors hissing closed behind him. The ship rumbled to life, autopilot engaging as it disconnected from the docking clamps. Through the tiny viewport, Kazim watched the human flagship drift away, its shadow swallowing stars as the shuttle accelerated into the vast emptiness. Kazim slumped into the pilot's chair and stared blankly ahead. His home world lay ahead, waiting, but he would not return as a hero. He would return as a ghost, a living corpse, and behind him, rising from the ruins of war, humanity, brutal, vengeful, unbreakable, would march across the stars. They had shown the galaxy their weakness once. Now they would show it their teeth. The journey through hyperspace was a blur of cold silence. No one spoke to him. No voices crackled through the comms. The ship was locked on autopilot, programmed with a single destination, the Imperial throne world. Kazim sat alone in the pilot's seat, watching the shifting colors of the void slip past the viewport. Time lost all meaning. Minutes, hours, days. It didn't matter anymore. Every breath he took felt heavier, a reminder of the shame he carried like armor made of rot. When the shuttle finally dropped out of hyperspace, the sight of his home world hit him like a punch to the gut. There it was, the jewel of the Empire, gleaming. Cities sprawled across continents, massive orbital stations hanging like silver crowns above the atmosphere, fleets of sleek Imperial warships patrolling proudly in orbit. It should have stirred pride in him. Once, it would have. Now it only made the hollow inside him ache deeper. The Imperial control towers hailed the shuttle immediately, their voices sharp with suspicion. "Unidentified vessel, transmit identification codes and purpose." The ship answered for him automatically, broadcasting his name, rank, and the diplomatic override codes built into the shuttle's systems. Silence followed for several seconds. Then another voice, colder and clipped, came through. "Proceed to docking platform 6. Do not deviate." Kazim set his jaw and obeyed. Not that he had a choice. As the shuttle descended, he could already see the crowds gathering at the spaceport. Below, hundreds, maybe thousands. Officials, soldiers, civilians. News drones hovered above like metal vultures, capturing every moment for the Empire's propaganda networks. They didn't know yet. They didn't understand what was about to walk off that shuttle. The landing gear struck the platform with a heavy thud. the engines whining down to silence. The ramp lowered slowly, creaking against the platform's polished surface. Kazim stood, smoothing the battered remnants of his uniform. No insignia, no weapon, only a tattered shadow of the admiral he had once been. He stepped into the light. For a heartbeat, the crowd was silent, staring in confused awe. Cameras flashed. Soldiers stood at attention, saluting sharply, and then someone gasped. Another whisper rippled through the crowd, a tide of horror. They saw the hollowness in his eyes, the way he staggered slightly as he walked. They saw the absence of an escort, the lack of any triumph, any ceremony. They saw the thin, mocking grin that curled across his lips, the broken pride he didn't even try to hide. Whispers turned to shouts, shouts turned to screams. Where is the fleet? Where are our heroes? What happened? Questions hurled at him like stones, but Kazim said nothing. He walked down the ramp with slow, measured steps, each one hammering another nail into the coffin of the Empire's myth of invincibility. An official rushed forward, trying to take control of the scene, trying to salvage the narrative, but it was too late. The people saw the truth written on Kazim's body, the tremor in his hands, the exhaustion in his bones, the ruin in his eyes. The Empire wasn't safe. The Empire wasn't eternal. The Empire had fallen. It just didn't know it yet. Behind Kazim, in the cold, endless void of space, humanity gathered its fleets, built its war machines, sharpened its knives. Earth had been attacked, Earth had bled, and now Earth would conquer. As Kazim reached the edge of the platform, he paused, turning slightly toward the stunned crowds, the flashing cameras, the crumbling faces of once proud officials. He raised his head high, not in defiance, but in finality. "They're coming," he said, his voice low but carrying like a funeral bell. "And there will be no mercy." The silence that followed was heavier than any bomb. Kazim let the words hang in the air, a prophecy written not in hope but in blood. Then he turned and walked into the heart of the doomed empire, a broken man bearing the banner of humanity's vengeance. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. 3 years later, Kazim stood at the window of his small dwelling on the outskirts of what had once been the imperial capital. The city that had gleamed with golden spires and crystal towers now lay half in ruins, its remaining structures repurposed by the human occupation forces. Earth flags fluttered from buildings where imperial banners had once hung proudly. His predictions had come true with brutal efficiency. The humans had not simply defeated the empire, they had dismantled it methodically piece by piece. World after world had fallen, some without firing a shot, their populations having seen the footage of Kazim's return broadcast across every imperial channel. They had kept him alive, just as Leon had promised. Not out of mercy, but as a living monument to defeat. The former admiral now spent his days under loose house arrest, occasionally trotted out for official functions where newly conquered worlds sent their representatives to pledge allegiance to Earth. His golden eyes, once bright, with imperial pride, had dimmed to a dull bronze. He moved with the careful slowness of someone much older than his years, the weight of his role in history having bent his once proud posture. A soft chime at the door drew his attention. Kazim didn't bother to answer. The human guards never waited for permission anyway. The door slid open, and to his surprise, Admiral Leon himself stepped inside. 3 years had added silver to his temples, but his eyes remained just as cold, just as calculating. "Admiral," Kazim said, the title feeling strange on his tongue. He hadn't used it in reference to himself since that fateful day. Leon nodded once. "Kazim, no admiral in return. That title had died with the Empire. What brings Earth's conqueror to my humble abode?" Kazim asked, gesturing at the sparse room. "Have you come to gloat? Or perhaps you need more information for your next conquest?" Leon didn't rise to the bait. He simply placed a data pad on the table between them. "The Unified Council meets next month," he said. "Representatives from 50 former Imperial worlds will be there, along with delegations from 30 independent systems that have sought alliance with Earth." Kazim's brow furrowed. "And this concerns me how?" "Your presence has been requested." A bitter laugh escaped Kazim's throat. "As what? The Empire's ghost? A reminder of your victory?" Leon's expression remained impassive. "As an advisor." Silence hung between them for a moment as Kazim processed the words. "Advisor," he repeated slowly, tasting the word, searching for the trap. "The galaxy is changing," Leon said. "Humanity has no interest in becoming the very thing we destroyed. We're not building another empire. We're creating something new. A federation of equals." "Equals," Kazim scoffed. "Your ships patrol our skies. Your soldiers walk our streets. Your language is now taught in our schools. This is occupation, Leon, not equality." Leon nodded, surprising Kazim. "For now, yes. But it won't always be this way. We learned from history, both yours and ours. Empires fall, always. But Retriclaude hit the max length for a message and has paused its response. You can write, continue to keep the chat going. A1 continue edit, but partnerships built on mutual respect can endure." Kazim turned away, staring out of the window again. In the distance, he could see a mixed crew of humans and his own people working together to rebuild a collapsed bridge. It was a sight that would have been unthinkable just years ago. "Why me?" he asked, his voice quiet. "I was your enemy. I led the invasion of your world. I planned the bombardment of your cities." "Precisely," Leon said. "You understand both sides. Now, you've seen the height of Imperial power and its fall. You know better than anyone what mistakes led to its collapse." Kazim was silent for a long moment. "The Empire believed itself immortal," he finally said. "That was its first and greatest mistake." Leon moved to stand beside him at the window. "Humanity nearly made the same error after our victory. Some of our leaders wanted to simply replace the Empire, take its place, rule as you had ruled. What stopped them? The memory of what we fought against," Leone said, "and voices like mine, reminding them that we didn't fight to become conquerors. We fought to ensure no one would ever conquer us again." Kazim studied Leon's profile. The human looked tired, not defeated, but worn by the weight of responsibility. Perhaps they weren't so different after all. "The Council," Kazim said carefully. "What would my role be exactly?" "To speak the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. To help build something that can last beyond both our lifetimes." A flicker of something Kazim hadn't felt in years stirred in his chest. Not hope, he was too broken for that, but purpose. Reason to continue beyond mere existence. "And if I refuse?" Leone shrugged. "Then nothing changes for you. You remain here, comfortable, but irrelevant, while the galaxy transforms around you." Put that way, the choice seemed obvious. Yet Kazim hesitated. "My people will see me as a traitor, first for surrendering, then for collaborating." "Some will," Leon acknowledged. "Others already see you as the one who saved countless lives by preventing a hopeless last stand." Leon turned to leave but paused at the door. "The shuttle leaves in 3 days. The choice is yours." After the human admiral left, Kazim remained at the window until long after sunset, watching as the city lights came on one by one. The capital had changed, but it lived on. Perhaps that was lesson enough. 3 days later, Kazim boarded a human, diplomatic shuttle, wearing simple civilian clothes instead of a uniform for the first time in his adult life. As the ship rose through the atmosphere, he caught a glimpse of the sprawling reconstruction efforts below, the skeleton of a new city emerging from the ruins of the old. The journey to Earth took 7 days. Kazim spent most of it in his quarters, preparing himself for what was to come. When they finally reached humanity's homeworld, he steeled himself for the hatred he would face. Instead, he found something more complex. There was suspicion, certainly, and cold formality from many of the human officials. But there was also curiosity, and from some of the older military personnel, a grudging professional respect. The unified council chambers were housed in a massive structure built partially underground, a remnant of humanity's wartime mentality. Representatives from dozens of worlds filled the circular chamber, their varied forms a testament to the diversity of the galaxy. Humans sat alongside beings from the former empire and independent worlds alike. When Kazim entered, conversation halted momentarily before resuming in hushed tones. He was shown to a seat at one of the advisory tables, not center stage but not hidden away either. Leon opened the proceedings with little ceremony. 3 years ago, we faced extinction. Today, we gather to ensure no world faces that threat again. What followed was unlike any Imperial Council Kazim had ever attended. Voices were raised, disagreements aired openly. Representatives from worlds that had suffered under the Empire spoke of their pain without censorship. Human delegates argued openly among themselves about the proper path forward. What might have seemed like chaos to Imperial sensibilities revealed itself to Kazim as something else entirely, a strength the Empire had never possessed. The ability to question, to challenge, to evolve. When his turn came to speak, Kazim rose slowly, aware of all eyes upon him. "I commanded the fleet that came to conquer your world," he began, addressing not just the humans, but the entire assembly. "I believed absolutely in the Empire's divine right to rule. That certainty blinded me, as it blinded generations before me." He paused, looking around the chamber. "The Empire fell not because humanity was stronger, though you proved to be. It fell because it could not imagine any future but its own eternal dominion. It could not adapt. It could not learn. And what cannot change must eventually break." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Kazim continued, his voice growing stronger. "I have been both conqueror and conquered. I have seen what power does when it answers to no one. I have seen what happens when diversity is crushed rather than cultivated. And I tell you now, if this new federation is to survive where the Empire failed, it must never stop questioning itself. It must never believe itself infallible. It must hear every voice, even those that speak in dissent." Silence followed his words. Then, from an unexpected corner, applause began. Not thunderous, but steady and spreading. A representative from one of the worlds that had suffered most under Imperial rule stood, her 4 eyes fixed on Kazim. "We remember what the Empire did," she said. "We will never forget. But we must build something better, or the cycle of vengeance will never end." The debate continued long into the night. Not everyone was convinced. Old wounds still bled. Trust would take generations to build. But something had begun. Something neither imperial nor purely human, but new. As the council adjourned for the day, Leone approached Kazim. "Well spoken," the human admiral said. "I merely stated what I have learned at great cost," Kazim replied. Leone nodded. "The hardest lessons often are." In the months that followed, Kazim found himself increasingly involved in the formation of the new federation. His knowledge of imperial systems proved invaluable in dismantling the remaining power structures without causing chaos. His understanding of diverse species helped bridge cultural gaps, and slowly the galaxy began to heal. 5 years after his initial surrender, Kazim stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Federation vessel Concordia. Below, Earth and his homeworld had jointly established the first Galactic Academy, a place where young minds from across known space could learn together. Leone joined him, now wearing the simple uniform of the Federation rather than Earth's military colors. Did you ever imagine this? Leone asked, gesturing to the academy below. That day on your bridge when you surrendered? Kazim shook his head. Never. I expected extinction, yours or ours. As did I, Leone admitted. I was prepared to erase the Empire from history. What changed your mind? Leone considered this. I saw too many empires in our own history rise and fall. I realized destroying you would only create a vacuum for another power to fill. Breaking the cycle seemed more important than vengeance. Kazim nodded slowly. The Empire would never have shown such wisdom. That's why you won. That's why you'll endure where we failed. Together they watched as ships from a dozen worlds docked at the academy, bringing the first class of students. Children who would grow up knowing neither imperial domination nor the terrible vengeance that had nearly followed it. We're still making mistakes, Leone said. The Federation isn't perfect. No, Kazim agreed, but you're willing to admit that. The Empire never could. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Kazim realized something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not for himself. His role in history was forever marked by defeat. But for the galaxy itself. The Empire had fallen, but from its ashes and humanity's fire, something stronger was emerging, not built on conquest or fear, but on the harder, more durable foundation of mutual respect. And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all.